It's a pupil accommodation and facility organization procedure. And again, going through it, you'll see a lot of new information, but you'll see some of the things that we did in the past continues to be done. So ongoing long-term accommodation plans assesses, again, student programs, current enrollment and accommodation, enrollment projections, renewal needs and facility conditions, and again, ministry initiatives pertaining to facility and accommodations. We'll forecast where facilities will remain sustainable, where the new schools, certificate renovations and additions will be needed, potential adjustments to existing attendance areas, and this is an important factor, is that the attendance area, adjusting kids from one school to another school, especially through a consolidation process, is required. So we need to understand to use space that we have available to us, potentially by adjusting attendance areas rather than closing schools. Which operating and sustainable facilities have unused space, and which facilities may be considered for consolidation and or closure. So those are all the things that we'll be assessing in our pupil accommodation plan. The first step of the accommodation review is the presentation of the initial senior administration report to the trustees, containing one or more options to address pupil accommodation issues with respect to the school, a recommendation to consolidate and or close one or more schools and create new attendance areas, a recommended option if more than one option is presented, so we have to come with at least a recommendation even though we might give them options, information on action taken by TVC administration prior to formally submitting, so this is all that community talk we were talking about, which community meetings we had, what dialogue we've had, that has to be all included in our report. School information profiles for each school, so you asked about that. That will be included in our initial report, so all that information will be up front. And dates of respected orientation meeting, initial public meeting, second public meeting, and final public meeting. So we'll give all those dates up front so everybody will understand the process. The accommodation option, so our option when we talk in the initial staff report, a summary of accommodation issues for the school under review, where students are proposed to be accommodated and the proposed attendance area, so we'll actually have mapping done to show where we think the lines will be for the attendance area. What proposed changes to the existing facilities are required as a result, additions, renovations, program changes. Any program change as a result of proposed options. How student transportation will be affected, so we have to do the transportation modeling at the beginning of the arc, not throughout the arc or towards the end of the arc. If any new capital investment is required, operating costs and potential savings, which include staffing costs. So we have to do the financials at the beginning of the arc to show the trustees exactly what type of financial impact we'll have in our operating budget if the recommended option is going to go forward. Planning information received from community organizations. Again, we insert all the information received up to date at the annual meeting, or rather in the pre-meeting, we go back to them before we go to this. So we indicate to them this is all the information received from the community organizations, municipalities with respect to this grouping of schools, and the school information profile for each school under consideration. And any recommended option must be accompanied by a timeline. So we have to lay out exactly when all this would happen and the student accommodation would be changed. The next step, if the trustees do approve to proceed with an accommodation review, TVC will then invite affected entities to a post-determination meeting. So this is another step involved with the community organizations and municipalities. So we talked to them before, we were saying we're thinking about doing an ARC, do you have any information for us? Now we got to talk to them again saying we are doing an ARC. Come to a meeting, we want to talk to you about, and talk about it. We're going to invite all municipal levels of government, community organizations listed, so the community organizations that will be coming to that annual meeting will also be notified. Directors of education and coterminous boards and the ministry has to be notified that we are about to do an ARC. At this post-determination meeting, we'll specify the dates and timelines, as well as when the public meetings will be held. Request the invitees to respond to whether they're going to be attending the meeting and if they wish to make a presentation. Advise invitees that if they wish to make their views included in the final senior min report, they must do so 5 days in advance. So now, all the affected municipalities and community organizations have a direct line to the board report or the final staff report where they can actually give us their input directly to us. We meet with them, we explain to them the options, we explain to them the report, they can ask questions of us, and they have a direct tie to us and a direct tie through the process. That replaces them sitting on the ARCs. It gives them a more direct route right to administration and make their thoughts known. And again, we're trying to accomplish what the ministry had asked us to do with respect to that. At the meeting with them, we'll review our administrative report. We'll provide a link to the report, advise invitees of their entitlement to attend all ARC meetings, so they are still allowed to attend all ARC meetings, and advise them of their entitlement to presentations to the ARC themselves. So any municipality, community organizations can be put on as presenters at the actual ARC meetings that we're proposing. So again, they have a direct discussion with the people that are giving their input and feedback to the community. This is an important slide and why it's bolded. The role of the ARC is to be the conduit of information shared between TVDSB and the school communities. This is the ARC, and that's what they're to do. We need to understand how the school communities feel about the recommendations. The school communities, not the broader public sector, not the municipalities. How does the school feel about it? And the ARCs will neither be asked nor entitled to approve the senior administration report or the final senior administration report. No longer do they have to create a report or comment on the report. They just have to tell us how the community feels about the recommended options that are going forward. With respect to the membership of the ARC, for an elementary school, and this again is different, we'll have 2 parents or guardians of students enrolled in each of the schools, in each of the divisions, early years, primary, junior, and intermediate, so potentially 8 parents per school involved. 2 full-time students, so we've included students now, but they have to be in the intermediate division, will be on the ARC. The chair of the school council or designate, the president of the Home and School Association, and if a school has an FMI population of 20 or more, they'll have a rep, or if they have a holding zone with 20 or more kids attending that school from a holding zone, they'll also be allowed to have a parent rep on it. With respect to the membership of a secondary school, basically the same, other than we're asking for 1 full-time student of each of the grades of the school to be on the ARC. So it'll be a grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 will be asked to be on the ARC along with the other members we just mentioned. After the membership of the ARC has been determined, TVC will invite the members to an orientation meeting, review the overall accommodation review process. We're going to explain to them how it happens. Review relevant information contained in the procedures. So we're going to go over the procedures in detail with them. Review their roles and responsibilities and take questions of clarification of how the ARC process is to happen. So it'll be a special meeting with them to go through that with them. Then we start in the initial public meeting. This will be the first public meeting of the ARC. It'll be on our website. We'll be placing an ad in local papers advertising it. We'll be providing written notice to parents and guardians and students attending the ARC through the students of the school. And the meetings cannot happen not less than 30 days after the trustees decide to proceed with the accommodation review. At the initial public meeting, we'll provide an overview of the orientation meeting, present the initial senior admin report, provide an overview of the applicable school information profiles. We'll receive presentations to the community organizations and the public. So this is the first opportunity for the community organizations and the public to speak to the ARC directly and take answers, questions from the ARC members, and these meetings are open to the public. Then we have taken a little different track on this, and what we've asked now is for the school ARC subcommittee, so those 8 parents and 4 students and president of the home and school, president and the chair of the home and school and president of the school council, to go back to their school after the initial public meeting and have a meeting with their school community in their own community. Those are the people that will be there. The principal will be there, and they'll just talk about what they heard, what they feel. They'll allow the school ARC subcommittees with an opportunity to explain the information received at the initial public meeting, obtain public input from their school community, determine if there's any additional information they require from senior administration to support or questions they need answered with respect to the report, and discuss the needs and timing for future school meetings. So after they have the initial meeting with all the ARC members, they go back and break into their school communities, subcommittees, and they have a meeting with their own school community, call a town hall meeting type of thing, where they're asked the community to come out and hear from them what we're proposing, what senior administration is proposing. That moves us to the second public meeting, which the notices will be followed in the same process. The members of the ARC will be asked to attend the second public meeting. They'll review new information requested by the school ARC subcommittee. So any new information that this school had asked for, the cost of a new school, we'll give it to that subcommittee, but we'll also give it to all the subcommittees. So they'll have all the information working together with them. So we'll be at that committee detailing all new information requested and given. The chairs of each of the school ARC subcommittees will report on the comments made and discussions had at their school level meetings. There's kind of a check-in, like how does your school feel about it? So we'll be talking with the other ARC members and all the different schools at that point. There will be an opportunity for presentations from the community organizations and the public. So again, another opportunity for them to talk directly, the community organizations, which include municipalities or anybody, and the public to go and talk to the ARC members about what they feel about the recommendations. And there will be a question and answer period from the ARC members, of the members of the ARC. After the second public meeting, the respective school ARC subcommittees will hold at least one additional school level meeting with the school community to explain the information they received, any updates, obtain additional input from their school community. And then one of the major responsibilities of the school ARC subcommittee will be to prepare a written report on the input received at their respective school level meeting. So basically, we're asking them to prepare a report. And again, it doesn't have to be by consensus, but it should be presented at the final public meeting, just what their school community feels about the recommendations, how they like about it. They want to recommend something else. They like it, they hate it, they want something different. Just tell us what you feel. And again, it doesn't have to be by consensus, but we need that information back for the final public meeting. At the final public meetings, the members of the respective ARCs will be asked to attend. School ARC subcommittees reports will be presented, so each school will present how they feel about the recommendation. This will be open to the public, including all representatives of community organizations, but there will be no presentations that night. This is the final meeting of the ARC. No new information will be presented after tonight. They have to prepare their report to give to the administration about how they feel about the proposal. The final senior administration then takes that report. We have 10 days. We'll prepare a report not less than 10 days after the final public meeting, and then we'll circulate that report to all ARC members and identified community organizations. So they'll all know what senior administration is proposing to the board or recommending to the board. The final senior administration report will include senior administration's recommendation on pupil accommodation and attendance areas with a proposed timeline. Advise parties wishing to make presentations to the trustees of the public delegation meeting, so we'll make them aware that that's their opportunity now to present to the trustees directly. Include schedules and written input from the community organization, so anything that we've got from that first meeting when we asked them to attend, the municipalities and so on and so forth, give us any thoughts you have on that, will be included, as well as all the ARC subcommittee reports will be attached to the final senior administration report. Senior administration report will then be presented to the trustees. The trustees may ask us any questions for clarification. There will be no debate that night with respect, or no vote on the recommendation, and the final decision of the trustees will be made at a later date of the Board of Trustees. Then we move to the public delegation meeting. So we've tabled our report. Everybody knows what senior administration feels. We have all the ARC subcommittee reports saying how the school feels. We have all the community organizations telling us they think about the recommendation. But now we allow anybody to have a direct discussion with the trustees. So allow school communities, community organizations, and the public to provide input directly to the trustees on our report. Notice of the meeting and the applicable report will be posted on our website at least 15 days in advance of the meeting. So, and then TVDS administration will compile the feedback received through the presentations made, which will be submitted to the trustees prior to making the final decision. So again, that night we compile all the feedback we heard, all the presentations, and again we attach that to the final report for the board to make a final decision. So the board, before its final decision, has everything, any input received throughout the whole process. The final decision of the trustees have the discretion to approve, modify one or more recommendations, defer in making a decision, or approve a different outcome, and must be at least 10 school days between the public delegation meeting and the final decision of the trustees. So it has to be a 10-day period before the trustees can make a final decision. Once the decision's made, TVC will communicate the following timelines for if there is a consolidation, timelines for consolidation and/or closures, adjustments of the attendance areas, availability of school programs, related student transportation information, and staffing complements. Now, working through our timelines, which we just talked about, From the initial senior report, the trustees' approval to conduct notice to the community organizations, the ARC is now formed, orientation meeting, initial public meeting, school level meeting, then the second public meeting, further school level meeting, another ARC subcommittee meeting, final public meeting, final senior report, final senior admin report meeting, public delegation, and final decision of the trustees. There's 140 days. So if you recall all those steps working through, we had 100 days minimum. Our minimum now, just in our procedures, is 140 days. And mainly around that extras public meeting as well as the school level meetings expanded that process. The other timelines are basically enshrined by the ministry. So we've met the ministry for the minimum standard. Our minimum will be 140 days. As again, just seeing the ministries is 100 days, so we met that guideline, we allowed that to show, which is, again, the ministry's process. Again, that is the guidelines for our new school consolidation or pupil accommodation ARC process. I would say that I think we've attempted to ensure that the municipalities and community organizations have ample opportunities to not only discuss with administration, the ARC, but also the board. We've allowed the school communities a real opportunity to give their voice directly in a non-confrontational process. We're taking away the school against school meetings. We really want to know just what that school feels. And since they don't have to come to consensus of report anymore, it's really just about what does your school feel about the recommendation and so on and so forth. And that was always a very contentious issue with respect to the ARC process. I think we've shortened up the process. I think sometimes it became well too long, going into 12, 14, 16 months. And so basically what we're looking at is starting the ARCs in November with a recommendation of the initial staff report, orientation meeting in December. The ARC meetings would be January, February, March, delegation in April, decision by the board May, June. So we're hoping to wrap it up basically starting just at Christmas and wrapping it up by June so it won't drag on. And again, ensuring that everybody has an opportunity to be heard, but also ensuring that they're well informed, that all the information's up front, that we have done the business case, we've done the modeling. This is there's no guesswork or no unknowns for the community to deal with, and then you have the information that you can actually debate, discuss, comment on, rather than waiting for information to come out or have unanswered questions that need to be answered before the community really feels comfortable with deciding whichever way they want to do with respect to the recommendations. Again, I think we followed all the minimum standards of the guidelines. We've exceeded a number of them, and we're hopeful that we can have this approved next spring so we can continue with the pupil accommodation planning for the board. Let me please take any questions with respect to this procedure. Yes?
With regards to the accommodation options as they're presented to the community and the board eventually, will they include all the costing, renos, bills, transport renewals, and future operating costs of that plan? And if the ARC came to present some additional options, would those be costed out as well in the plan?
The procedures, again, the procedure is quite specific that we do. Any option has to be costed out. So renovations, alterations, new constructions, operating costs, operating savings, all has to be detailed for you. One of the requests could be, and quite likely to be, what about building an addition to this school? What would the capital be and all that? The senior administration, again, will, any information that's readily available, will produce for you. Within limitations, again, I think the wording is reasonable requests will be adhered to. So yes, you would get that information. I think we could expect that from the school committee to say, what about instead of closing that school, what about building an addition on this school? And tell us about that. And I think we could then model. Okay, you need 250 extra pupil places. This is what the staffing would be. This would be the operating costs, so on and so forth. So we do a school information profile the best we could to kind of line up the information we've given you on the initial staff report to give you a fair indication of that, and then you can make your comments from that. So if a school committee, they're really feeling our school met, this is what we really would rather see happen, then I think you have the information, because I think the trustees need to know that it's even doable, and we need to support that information for you. Yes?
Kevin, with regards to the subcommittees preparing a written report, do you foresee the board providing guiding questions or limitations on how big that report could be? Because I would assume that it might get pretty adventurous for some groups. You could have a report that might be 400 or 500 pages, or a report that's...
We discussed that, and I think any attempt by us to tell you how you feel is problematic. We don't want that. So I think we have to accept the fact that if a school committee wants to write 300 pages of dialogue, then they have something to say, we should read it. I think if we sort of say it can only be 4 pages long, we'll only be criticized. If we say it has to be in this template, potentially they may want to venture off that. So we really have left it up to the school community to do it. Now, I don't doubt for 1 minute that, as it moves forward, that they may want to use templates from other subcommittees. We might want to suggest to them that this is how they organize it or something like that. But we really don't want to, and we purposely did not actually detail how that report is to be generated or what it's to look like. And we did that purposely so that it really is what your school feels. And like I said, if they want to write 1 page or they want to write 300 pages, it's up to them. They have something to say, we should listen to it. Yes.
Your student representation committee related to the parents that are on the ARC as well?
We did not put any requirement for the students as long as they're full-time students, so they could be related to the parents. Again, there's no vote. It's just how do they feel, right? Regarding, we want to get information. So, again, if they're the best candidates for the job, that have the best student voice, then they should be the ones that represent it. Yes?
The ARC is to act as a conduit, and they're communicating with the community and the school community, correct?
Yes.
Are there procedures in place that list how they specifically are to communicate with the community?
We do. We have in the procedure, we talk about this, the public meeting that they're going to hold, what should be on the agenda. We also have rules of how that meeting should be conducted. So basically we have that in place in the procedure so that they have some guidance in it. The principal is involved as a resource to the committee. And also we also allow for other TVDSB personnel to attend if they need that help. So, but it is really, it is defined. It gives them some structure to what their meeting should look like and what they're trying to accomplish at their meetings and how the input should be garnered.
So I guess to clarify, I'm asking about electronic communication, paper communication.
Totally up to the subcommittee. Surveys, how they want to communicate. The only thing that we do try to, again, it's what you hear in the questions you ask, and the initial report. We want you to explain our report to your community. We want, you may not agree with it, which is fine, but just relay to them what you heard. It takes the town hall when we have, go to a strange place, there's all these different people. You're in your own gym, you're in your own library, you're at your school council meeting. Really, you can be probably the most comfortable there and give us what you really think and, do your best thinking on it. And if you have other questions you need to answer, ask us. But just tell us exactly, what it is that your community feels, and however you want to come about understanding that, be it surveys, electronic, communication, or however, that you feel most comfortable and you think does the best job, that's what we'd be looking for. Any other questions? Ruth?
Sorry, not a question. I just want to add to that. In the procedure itself, because I think one of the things you may be looking at in Section 9, where it talks about the school level ARC subcommittees, there are sort of a minimum standard. So it's under the roles of the principal. So there is a rule that it will be posted on the school website 5 days prior. There is a process for ensuring the agenda is posted and that a copy goes home with students. So there is sort of a minimum standard set to ensure that there is communication home on those school level meetings so that it's not just one way. Does that help address one of the concerns?
Yes.
Sorry, can I ask about that final public meeting too?
Yep.
There was a question earlier this evening about would there be more opportunity to gather more information, but I'm sure I heard you say that at that third meeting there would be no new information.
That's right. We've given the initial and second public meeting is where you have presentations from the community, you have, and the public, you have questions. we want to end it at that point so there's no new information so you can finalize your comments, because we really need to stay within the timelines that we're trying to work within and not have it dragged out. So it's our hope, with lots of notice, that people will be able to present and ask questions, and at the second public meeting they're going to be able to hear what the other schools are feeling, some of the questions that they've asked, and so on and so forth. But at the final public meeting, we're really there to present your report to the ARC. And again, if there's questions of your report or your comments, we could ask them at that stage or have the other schools ask at that stage. But we really don't want more information that may go back and change your minds again. We think we've given ample time through the process to have that completed. And that's why we added the second meeting, because we thought one in the final wouldn't work. Yes?
With the notice of public meeting, what's the timeline between when that goes out as an advertisement?
I don't have them all memorized. There's like all these different meetings we have dictated not less than 10 days and not less than 15 days. We've built in ample time in all the notices to make sure that you have, at least two weeks to work on stuff. Our procedure is quite specific. We talk about school days. We just use days here, but we discount holidays and weekends and so on. So we're working on the school calendar to work within that. So basically, with the school calendar, by starting in November, it will take us to June with the March break, Christmas break, and everything taken off. But we think we've given ample time on all the notices that you have time, not only to do public delegations, but to read the report, attend public meetings, understand what's happening. Again, but it's out for public input. So when you read the procedure, and one of the questions you do, there's no way you can go through that all in one night. If you think there's not enough time or there's a problem, I think that's the kind of input we need. We think we've developed a pretty good timeline on it, but again, it'd be up to your input or your discussion or your review of the actual document. Yes?
Does this new procedure involve tours of each individual school that's involved in the
It can. Again, it's not, basically, that's all up for the discussion of the subcommittees. So basically, it could be built in. We didn't build it into the procedure, but definitely that's something that could be asked for. The school information profile may give you the indication, but at the same time, a tour of the school would be probably encouraged and not a problem. Okay, we can move to the, I'm sorry. The exemption piece? No. Basically, we saw the exemptions, other than the fact that we have to notify the school community that this is happening, so on and so forth. But if you look at the exemptions, it's basically we have to rebuild a school in your attendance area or change schools within your attendance area. So it's within the same confines, but we just have to notify the parents and trustees. When we bring a report to the trustees on doing that, one of them would be a communication plan. If we're renovating and you have to be temporarily displaced, that communication would go to the parents. If it's a lease school, which we don't have any, and these are the exemptions that are from the ministry, so they're trying to cover all the province with respect to that. If it's a lease school, the school's lease is terminated, you don't have to do an ARC because you may not have time to do an ARC, that type of thing. So there's really nothing other than, I'm sure, that any type of recommendation to close a school with respect to an exemption, it would be communicated in discussions with the school community at that time.
So there's no discussions with the school committee?
Well, there would be, but it doesn't have to go through this long process. Like, you don't, first of all, you're not dealing with another school. And again, the exemptions are basically there just to, under these unique circumstances that you wouldn't have to do it. Now, we did it once with an exemption when we closed Huron Heights and moved it to Louise Arbor, but it was within its attendance area. And we did talk to the school community about it and went back through the whole process. So, yeah. And the trustees heard that. We would develop it, but it doesn't have to go through this whole ministry guideline in which we have to deal with it much more profoundly. The one thing that I didn't talk about tonight, but we should know about, is that this procedure is still reviewable by the province. So if you do not follow this procedure, the community can bring action against the board and ask the province to do a review to ensure that we've met this procedure. So that's why they give the exemptions, because of that fact. So that is still in the guidelines, and it's still a ministry requirement that any ARC decision can be reviewed, not on the decision, but did the board follow its procedure? So that's why the details in this procedure, and a lot of details in this procedure, to ensure that we have the proper processes involved and that there's no gray areas. We feel we've tidied a lot of them up so that there's no confusion on what has to happen through the ARC process.
I understand the ARC procedure, well, they will distribute the exemptions not followed in the without a case-by-case basis.
Basically, yes.
And so, are they going to actually consider what the community wants and what the school wants as well? Or are they just going in and dictating what's going on?
I think, again, they're unique and few and far between, so to speak. But any time that we would have to make an accommodation move, we'd have to go to the board and ask, give them a report and ask, make a recommendation to the board. And administration on that case would then make, part of the process would be public consultation. The board would want to know what the community felt about it. Again, unless it's an emergency situation where we have to displace because of fire or some sort of issue that we can't be in the building. But anything that would be planned would be discussed with the community. But again, what we're trying to do with this procedure is not build procedures into unique situations, but to follow the guidelines for all other pupil accommodation reviews. And they are allowing those exemptions, which are part of our procedure. But rest assured, and I think that maybe the chair would like to speak to it, there would be a process involved. And it says right in there that we would consult with it.
And actually, in the procedure, the draft procedure, it's section 3.
Yeah.
It's not that I know this, but there is a statement that says, in such circumstances, TVDSB will inform the respective school communities of the proposed accommodation plans for students before a decision is made by the trustees to consolidate or close a school. So if we ran into one of those exemptions, there would be a process, there would be information out, and it's actually not just to school communities. We actually take it one step further, where we also commit to, looking for the language here, but to also providing written notice to those community organizations and the municipalities as well. So we've committed to going further than the ministry requirements. We will ensure there's notice to the school community. We will ensure that there's notice to those community organizations and the municipalities, and that will all happen before the Board of Trustees make any decision.